Hello and welcome to episode 335 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. What's up?
Oh man, what a week already.
Yeah, wait till I tell you, it's only Wednesday.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. What else could happen before the podcast comes out? Well, there's enough to talk about already midway through the week, and it's been an interesting one. And let's talk about the big story, I guess, this week as far as aviation and navigation is concerned. The GPS jamming or something that affected Ursula von der Leyen's aircraft or the aircraft that she was on. The story, I think, has morphed from something happened to, based on some of the reporting that we've seen, that they were about to fall out of the sky at any moment, to it was fine.
That's a wide range of things and emotions.
It's all sorts of all over. Here's what happened, not in a technical sense, but just in a storyline sense.
So remind me first, who is this and where did this happen?
Sure. So this happened in the Bulgarian city of Plovdiv. Ursula von der Leyen is the president of the European Commission. So I guess technically head of state. And she was traveling to various areas that are part of the European Union's effort to assist Ukraine in its war effort against Russia. They were flying from Warsaw to Plovdiv, which is in central Bulgaria, to make a visit there. They were approaching the airport and something happened.
Something.
Yes, that affected the aircraft's ability to use a GPS-based approach to the airport.
Okay, entirely, I'm not going to say not out of the ordinary, because I don't actually know if GPS jamming / spoofing is common in Bulgaria, but at least as a thing that exists in the world, this is not uncommon, as we know.
Unfortunately, totally normal now. GPS jamming would be not entirely unusual in that particular region.
Okay, so end of story. What do we got next?
But the narrative that began circulating not long after the aircraft landed safely, mind you, was that the GPS went out. The pilots were panicking and pulling paper charts. The aircraft circled for an hour, and then they were finally able to land.
Wait, like actual paper? Like crinkly dead trees?
Crinkly slices of dead trees pressed and then printed upon paper.
You know what? To me, forget the GPS jamming. That's the story, is that pilots were using dead tree navigational charts and not an electronic flight bag with every known approach plate in the universe. Paper. That's the story to me.
That's what I said. But the fact is, the aircraft did not circle for an hour. So that led me to question what else, as part of this particular story, might not pass the sniff test. So the flight itself was scheduled to take a normal amount of time. Between Warsaw and Plovdiv, it was scheduled to take an hour and 48 minutes. The aircraft was in the air for an hour and 57 minutes and a few seconds.
So we're not talking exactly a huge difference here, are we?
There was no circling for an hour. So what else is going on here? There is ATC audio between the flight crew and the Bulgarian air traffic controllers. The flight crew reports an issue with GPS. They don't share specifics. They don't say they are subject to GPS jamming or anything that would give us any more of a clue than they are having an issue with GPS, and they are offered and accept an ILS approach instead.
All right, so great. It's not like that Finnish airport, I think it was in Finland, that didn't have ILS. They had other options. That's great.
So that was the Finnair flight to not Finland. It was a Finnair flight to somewhere, I think it was Tartu in Estonia, that only had the GPS-based approach. So they couldn't land until they developed a non-GPS-based approach. That's not the case here. There is an ILS approach available. They used it and landed just fine. If you look at the flight path, it's clear to me, at least, and we will post the flight path here in the show notes, that they were performing an initial approach. That didn't work for whatever reason. So they went into the published ILS approach and landed just fine.
Okay, end of story, I assume, right?
One would think, but after the flight, journalists ran with it and European Commission officials started confirming that the aircraft was subject to GPS jamming and it was the Russians.
Okay, again, nothing new. Welcome to 2025.
Sure, but the data from the aircraft does not indicate any of the hallmarks of standard GPS jamming.
Okay, what are the standard hallmarks of GPS jamming? Airplane thinking it's elsewhere, airplane not knowing it's anywhere. Does a big Russian flag come up on the primary flight display? What happens?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. GPS interference is and we're using GPS here as a shorthand for actual global positioning system, the European Galileo, Chinese Baidu, any global navigation satellite system, which is just a mouthful to say. So GPS gets the shorthand. So interference there usually falls into two types, jamming or spoofing. Spoofing's very easy to see because the aircraft goes from here to there in an impossible way. You're thinking of seeing multiple aircraft floating at 30,000 feet above the runway at Cairo, which was a common GPS spoofing, I don't want to say technique, but spoof location as aircraft were flying around the Eastern Mediterranean. So Israel, Lebanon, Syria, in that area. So that's spoofing, and it's fairly easy to see. Jamming is when the signal is just degraded and the aircraft can't tell you where it is. And in that case, we end up with some values in the ADS-B data that tells us the aircraft is less sure of the position that it is receiving from the satellites. A good value is 8. That's what we want, at least 8 on the navigation integrity category values. That's the value that this particular aircraft sent the entire flight.
So it never detected that it was being jammed, basically. It just thought the whole time, all is well.
All is well, as far as the ADS-B data that we receive from the aircraft is concerned. So that leads to the question of what actually affected this aircraft. And the leap to we were being jammed by the Russians is one that our data and the data that we've received from the aircraft and just looking at the flight path doesn't necessarily support without additional investigation.
Okay, so it could have just been run-of-the-mill instrumentation
Instrumentation problem, avionics issue, a blip, anything. That said, the Bulgarians have said there's no need for further investigation.
Oh, okay.
So
again, end of story.
Yeah, I mean, this basically becomes the end of the story, but it's continued on because to me is much more interesting to understand what actually happened. Like if it was an issue with the aircraft, because this does happen where aircraft experience momentary connectivity issues, experience avionics issues that make them unable to perform those precision approaches. And that just happens sometimes. And they deal with it, and it was dealt with very easily in this instance. But it really seems that, and this is where I am a little miffed, I guess is a polite way of putting it. There were some reporters on board who I think did a very big disservice with the initial reporting.
So were they immediately jumping from something wrong with the plane to Russian jamming?
Yes. We went from zero to Russian in no time at all.
All right. Not great.
I feel like we're never going to figure out what actually happened because what actually happened isn't normal jamming. At least in any of the we've looked
Can we
at.
blame it on 5G again? Remember when we used to blame everything on
Oh,
5G?
that was so great. Let's
Remember
do that.
that? Those days
Yes.
were great. Anything that was wrong, flight delayed, 5G. Lightning at the airport, oh, that's 5G. Deflated tire, oh, that's 5G's fault. Well, let's go back to that. Those things were so
Let's do that.
simple.
All right. See, we didn't need the Bulgarians to investigate. We did it ourselves.
Case closed.
All right. Well, thankfully, looking at actual threats that we know about that are real. I mean, and the bigger problem here is that there is a lot of satellite navigation interference going on all over the world,
Someone should build a
especially
map for
in that area. Yes, if only someone had built a map for that. Funny you should mention that, Jason. We can talk about that in just a second. But the ICAO Council is set to address some of these issues at its assembly later this month. So there are a number of proposals to deal with how interference is leading to a lack of safety and a breakdown in surveillance capability because of ADS-B gaps. So what they're proposing, a more consistent warning system so that people are more aware of these things. And they also want to work on ensuring that non-satellite based navigation services and assistance are not gotten rid of, so to speak, artificially soon, because we still need these things.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if we went a little too fast decommissioning things like not so much ILS, but VORs and primary or secondary radar. Like ADS-B doesn't seem like the end-all be-all for air traffic control that we maybe 10 years ago thought it would be or thought it should be. It seems far more susceptible at this period of time to mucking around with than just radar, which you can jam, I guess, but not as easily as GPS.
Yeah. And so some of the longer term solutions are independent systems that are not part of satellite based navigation aids that provide better resilience. Some of them are authentication capabilities. So Galileo's moving towards that. But these things are 2027, 2029, 2030, and beyond. So it's a big hassle right now. And it's good to see that ICAO is taking the lead on this. I'm not sure who else could realistically take the lead on it, but it's good to see that these things are being worked on. And we've talked about this before a little bit, but it's just this particular example that we're talking about this week with von der Leyen's aircraft. It's just, if they wanted to call attention to it, they could have just pointed to the entire Black Sea and said, see?
Look over there.
But they did this instead. So I'm not really sure what the whole point is or what actually happened, which to me is, again, much more interesting than run of the mill. It was the Russians. Also at the ICAO assembly, IATA, which is the trade organization made up of airlines, they're coming in with a proposal to raise the pilot retirement age from 65 to 67. Jason.
2 whole years.
You'll have no idea who's against that.
Everyone?
Well,
I mean, I can guess everyone.
You could guess everyone. The airlines are pretty on board. Everyone else, not so much.
Yeah, kind of like the mumblings to increase the retirement age of air traffic controllers. Nobody directly involved in being an air traffic controller wants anything to do with that. This seems like a last-ditch solution to a problem. I guess it's still a problem, but why? Why propose this at this point? I don't know.
Because they're trying to figure out ways to keep people around. We'll see how it's received at the ICAO assembly and report back later this month.
Okay. Didn't know we were still pursuing this, that there was such a pilot shortage that even now we would be proposing increasing the retirement age from 65 to 67. It wasn't really top of mind, at least for me right now.
Same. But I guess these things take a while to put into place.
Transition.
Yes. Speaking of taking a while to put things into place, after the attacks of September 11th, 2001, a number of security measures were considered by the FAA and regulators worldwide, including the installation of secondary barriers in front of the cockpit. So these would, in addition to strengthening the door, these would be barriers that would be put into place generally whenever that door needed to be opened in flight. So if a pilot needs to go use the lavatory, that door would be open. If the flight attendant is bringing the pilot a meal, that barrier would come down or be opened or put into place. That was an idea that came about not long after 2001. This is something that pilots' unions have been saying, sure, let's do this right away. The actual implementation of the rules and regulations for this was passed in 2023. So they didn't seem to be in a hurry.
No, not so much a hurry. So we loved our interim decades-long solution of take the flight attendant galley cart and just kind of jam it in the aisle and stand in front of it. And that's it. Problem solved.
And that was how they've done it for, decades.
Literally decades.
But Southwest Airlines has finally started installing the secondary barrier that blocks access to the flight deck whenever the flight deck door is open in flight. Southwest is installing these. They're going to have a few dozen installed by the end of the year.
And then new deliveries. These are not retrofits. They are not mandated to be on retrofits. They are only mandated in the near future, in next year, on new deliveries. So Southwest says, reporting from Runway Girl Network, says 26 737s will be delivered before the end of this year. With this, all 737 MAX 8s, because, well, what else is Southwest taking delivery of? It doesn't have an option. Yeah, Southwest getting ahead of it, not mandated to do that this year. It was originally required to start August 2025, but that was pushed back until August 2026. I have a feeling this will become the new Real ID of the aviation industry, yet another thing that was passed after the events of 9/11, and here we are decades later, only finally starting to see security measures put in place that at this point we're just like, why are we still bothering with this? But here we are.
And there we go. We'll see when other airlines begin to implement this, if they wait until they absolutely have to, or if they follow Southwest's lead and start getting in front of the deadline.
Yeah, so now they've got an armored cockpit door and a secondary barrier and some grumpy looking flight attendants with a drink cart just staring you down. So there's no getting by that.
No, there's definitely no getting by that. Last week, we talked about Frontier's sense of things, that Spirit might not be all that healthy. Well, it didn't take long for Spirit to say, we are very not healthy, and we are declaring bankruptcy again.
Again, for the second time in a year. Less than a year. Declaring bankruptcy twice in 9 months. This is some real Michael Scott walk out into the office and just yell, I declare bankruptcy action. You shouldn't be doing that this often, but everyone was pretty convinced that its first go at bankruptcy, it just didn't go far enough, didn't make enough changes. Very clear that it wasn't dramatic enough. But apparently there were some very specific reasons that Spirit went ahead and declared bankruptcy again for the second time this year. And it has to do with aircraft leases. Ian, what happened?
So Spirit has a large contingent of aircraft, both on order and already leased from AerCap.
AerCap's not happy.
AerCap came to Spirit at the end of July, or they entered into the lease transaction at the end of July in 2024 for 36 aircraft. At the end of August 2025, AerCap said, hey, all of the aircraft that haven't been delivered to you yet are in default.
Ooh.
And you owe us $2.1 million for each of these 36 aircraft.
Yes. AirCap said, and I quote, certain events under the undelivered aircraft leases has occurred. Or maybe that's not AirCap saying that. No, it is AirCap saying that. Spirit did not elaborate on what events, because I don't think Spirit knows what events happened. And
well, for its part, Spirit says, no, we didn't default on anything.
Spirit disagrees, which is part of the reason why it's going through bankruptcy again here, is to figure out what's happening and I guess maybe renegotiate or figure out what to do with the debt here. But $2.1 million a pop over 36 aircraft, that's not chump change. And Spirit doesn't have that kind of liquid cash lying around. What is that, $75 million? That's a lot of money. And that's on top of the aircraft it already has, which AirCap also says, gimme, gimme, gimme.
Yeah, so it gave a notice of termination for the aircraft Spirit ordered, and then it gave a notice of default for the aircraft that Spirit already has. So what Spirit did was they went and said, if people find out about this, they're going to think we're not in good shape, and they're going to want their money back too. And so they went and immediately filed another Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in less than 6 months, about 6 months. So not great. For its part, Spirit says, hey, we've got a plan this time.
Sure.
Unfortunately, their plan is basically to shrink their way to profitability, which in the history of airlines, I don't think has ever worked.
Ever works. They've got a 4-point plan, literally 4 bullet points. Redesign its network, optimize its fleet size. I feel like that bullet point's not voluntary. Address its cost structures. Why didn't you do that the first time? And then lastly, effectively compete and meet evolving consumer preferences with its 3 travel options: Spirit, First, Premium Economy, and Value. So 2 of those they already did or already should have done, and it ain't working. One of them, I don't see getting back to profitability by your leasing company taking away all your airplanes. And lastly is redesigning its network, which is redesign is just a euphemism for shrinking its network. So not too hopeful about this plan. And I had a conversation, I think with my dad or somebody recently about, well, this wouldn't have happened if the JetBlue merger went through. I'm like, well, no, I'm pretty sure if the merger went through, everything we've seen up until now, Spirit would have just dragged JetBlue down into the depths of hell along with it. So I think JetBlue and Frontier really dodged a bullet, and whoever's left is really going to get some good pickings on Spirit, because I just don't see it.
Yeah, this looks dire at this point.
It does. But on that, do not stop flying Spirit. Don't think they're going to disappear tomorrow, because that's not how bankruptcy works. That will only hasten a potential demise. If you have Spirit booked, fly. If you are looking to book Spirit, maybe do it sooner rather than later, because the route network that's here today may not be here 6 months from now. Man, it's really hard.
It won't even be here a month from now.
Yeah, it's really hard to say, on the one hand, don't stop flying Spirit because you'll make things worse. But on the other hand, they're dramatically shrinking their network. So it's going to be really hard to book them because you don't know if what you booked will actually exist in a month.
Exactly.
Yeah, yikes. None of this is any good.
So the week of October 2nd, a month from now, Spirit's pulling out of Albuquerque, Birmingham, Alabama, Boise, Idaho, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Columbia, South Carolina, Oakland, California, Portland, Oregon, Sacramento, California, Salt Lake City, San Diego, and San Jose, California.
Oh, was that it?
That's it.
And they're going to refocus on their hubs, which are presumably Detroit, Fort Lauderdale, and what other
Atlantic
hubs are
City,
left?
maybe?
Atlantic City? I don't know. What other hubs does Spirit even have?
I couldn't tell you at this point. I don't know what they're considering their hubs. I mean, I guess is the...
Well, Wikipedia considers operating bases Atlanta, Chicago, O'Hare, DFW, Detroit, Fort Lauderdale, Houston, Vegas, Miami, Newark, Orlando. That can't be right. These aren't
operating
hubs.
Bases.
Sure. Yeah, they're bases, but they're not hubs. So no one really knows. Somebody at Spirit probably knows, but yikes.
In similar loss-making news, this is an interesting story, because I think this is the first time I've ever seen an airline hire a bunch of consultants and the consultants say, sell all the aircraft you currently have.
Well, it can't be Spirit, because Spirit can't sell airplanes it doesn't own.
To be fair, they did say buy new ones.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah. Air Tahiti Nui hired the consulting firm Arthur Little to come in and look at their route structure and their profitability. And they did that. And the report that they put together says sell all of your airplanes and fly to other places.
Is that it?
That's it. I mean, they offer some specifics. So currently, the only profitable route that the airline is operating is between Papeete and Los Angeles.
That's interesting because they're not alone on that route, are they? Or at least from in Southern California, I think United also operates.
At least seasonally. I'm not sure if it operates all year round. They're making money on that route, and quite a bit. The Paris route is about break even. Auckland is about break even. But the company also flies to Seattle and Tokyo, and they lose a lot of money. The Seattle route accounts for 86% of the losses in 2024.
Wow.
So, wow. They needed consultants to say, maybe don't do that.
You know what? At least they're doing it.
Yeah.
That's something. That is not something you can take for granted because there are a lot of airlines out there that will operate in the red for eternity until it's too late. And then that airline doesn't exist anymore. Looking at you, South African Airways.
So the consultant's proposal was sell the 4 787-9s that you have, buy or somehow acquire some A330neos, 3 or 4 of them, and a pair of A321 XLRs.
That's very different. I would have expected recommendation to do like a sale and lease back because that's a very popular thing to raise funds real quick and you just lease your own airplanes back. But to completely shift, that's easier said than done.
What they're saying is that there's an issue with capacity on these routes, that they have way too much airplane for the routes that they're operating and the routes that they can operate profitably. So they said, stop flying to Tokyo, stop flying to Seattle. What are you doing? And then they said, maybe, just maybe, find cities that might make you money, like Sydney or San Francisco.
Yeah, well, maybe not San Francisco because there's already a ton of competition there. Those routes that I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure French Bee and United both operate SFO to Tahiti. So maybe don't do that. But yeah, not sure I like that recommendation. They are, in fact, the only airline. No, actually, Air France also competes on LAX to Tahiti. So I'm not sure what else is left for them. Try San Diego. California's a big state.
There you go. Let's go from French Polynesia all the way to Spain, where Ryanair and the Spanish airport operator are very, very mad at each other.
I love when Ryanair gets mad at a government or an airport agency or a competitor because they don't pull any punches. If Ryanair wants to say something, they say it. If they want to do something, well, maybe next year there will be 1 million fewer seats in the region.
Yeah, Ryanair is saying that it will cut 1 million seats to Spain in the coming winter season.
A 41% reduction in capacity. That's like Boeing has grounded an entire aircraft type impactful to Ryanair, but voluntary.
Yeah. 400,000 seats to the Canary Islands and 600,000 seats elsewhere in Spain, mostly at smaller regional airports. Ryanair says it's going to continue to grow at large airports like Barcelona and Madrid. But this whole thing stems from the fact that AENA, the airport's authority, is hiking the fees that it charges to airlines by 6.6% in the coming year.
Well, that doesn't sound all that high. That's like inflation.
Well, Ryanair is very, very upset that they're hiking those fees. It'll be the largest hike in more than 10 years. And the airport operator saw record profits over the previous year. So Ryanair seems very, very upset about all this. And they said, we're just going to fly elsewhere.
Okay. Where are they going with those million extra seats?
Yeah, they're going to go instead Italy, Morocco, Croatia, Sweden, and Hungary. They're going to shift capacity to those countries instead of flying into Spain. Unfortunately, this has the biggest effect on regional airports outside of major cities in Spain, or I guess outside of tier 1 cities in Spain. But we'll see if they can come to some sort of agreement, if the airport authority backs off the hike, or if Ryanair says, hey, we said what we're going to do and we're going to do it.
Yeah, Ryanair's got definitely the ability to gain the public's momentum behind them, I guess, to really rally their loyal passengers to fight what they see as injustice, and we'll see what happens here. But this is a big cut, big cut to airports that probably can't afford that.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out, whether, some of these airports can entice other operators to come in, or if this starts if Ryanair's not going to pay, then neither are we.
Yeah, well, Air Europa is Turkish Airlines' problem now. So, I don't know. Maybe Turkish will just pay it.
Maybe. We'll see. So, we talked about this early last month, but the FAA has now released its fully proposed Part 108 rule for beyond visual line of sight for drone operations. So the rule would apply to drones that are less than about 1,300 pounds and operating no higher than 400 feet. And it also includes ways for the operators to apply for permitting. So that's smaller scale stuff that involves one-offs, including agricultural work, surveying, learning how to fly a drone. And then you would need a more detailed certificate to perform higher risk flights that the FAA says are things like larger aircrafts flying over more dense population areas, as well as how big the drone is. What's also interesting is they're not going to issue airworthiness certifications. The operator is going to need to comply with requirements and then make a declaration to the FAA that their aircraft is meeting all of the standards.
Okay, so self-certification, basically?
Basically, yeah, where you're going to have a set of criteria that you're going to have to design to and then certify that we meet these things.
Okay, whatever.
It's a long read, but we'll put a link to it in the show notes. The FAA is also looking for the prime integrator for the brand new air traffic control system. So this is designed to meet their goal of implementing an entirely brand new system.
Self-stated as such. Their words, not ours. Ambitious goal.
So the prime integrator will manage the building of the brand new air traffic control system. They want the system online within 3 to 4 years.
I want a lot of things in 3 to 4 years. Not going to happen, most of them. But hey, maybe the FAA can pull a rabbit out of its hat.
I will be flabbergasted if any of this is remotely accomplished. The request for solutions is due by the 21st of September. So you've got about 3 weeks to put your package together and submit it to the FAA. Jason, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I will be subcontracting all of the work out to, I don't know, whoever wants it. I don't care. It's subcontracting. I feel like that's what's going to happen here.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. We missed this anniversary on the day of said anniversary, but we're still within the year. So Jason flagged it, and I think it's worth mentioning. Jason, What are we celebrating?
Worth a mention, 40 years of ETOPS flying, which is no small thing. Apparently, TWA operated the first transatlantic flight using ETOPS, which, Ian, remind me what ETOPS stands for.
So ETOPS was initially the performance requirement that denoted extended range twin engine operation performance standards.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've moved on. So now it's just it's EDTO, extended decision time operations, because it applies to aircraft that have more than 2 engines. It applies in other circumstances based on
It's just
number of
the
qualifications and things like
default
that.
terminology that makes plane go far over water.
Yes, we can also reference the more colloquial acronym of engines turn over or passengers swim.
That's true. There you go. Well, 40 years of ETOPS flying. And there's a thread on airliners.net, which we'll link to, which honestly, I agree with some of these people that ETOPS is probably one of the most impactful changes to commercial aviation ever. To go down from quad or 3-engine aircraft down to twin engine, which is really what we're going to be probably until the end of time, presumably. It had a massive impact on commercial aviation, being able to use smaller aircraft to go farther, opening a whole lot of new routes, which the 787 and A350 are still doing, both on the shorter end of the spectrum and the much, 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 much longer end of the spectrum. ETOPS is definitely one of, if not the most impactful changes in commercial aviation. Just so much more opportunity unlocked because you don't always need 4 engines for long haul. Or 3.
No, Richard Branson, you don't. Yeah, I mean, the fascinating thing is that modern turbofan engines can run, without a failure, hundreds of thousands of hours.
Or if it's a geared turbofan, hundreds of thousands minutes?
No.
Seconds? Ugh.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for the fact that it is an incredible, incredible testament to engineering that these machines have been developed to be so incredibly, resilient.
Yes, with such minimal downtime and maintenance. I mean, the fact that you could fly an aircraft nonstop between Singapore and New York and then quick turn it, a 90-minute stay on the ground, fire it back up and do it all over again. That's crazy, but is just completely ordinary at the same time.
They like to be in the air. It's their natural environment.
That's true.
Last week, we talked about some of the issues surrounding Newark's airport with international passenger traffic being halted, United having to turn around, SAS having to cancel its final flight of the summer season. They're back up and running now. Whatever security issues they had been solved by bringing in Danish airport operator security people from somewhere in Denmark. That wasn't specified where, and they seem to be getting all the training that they need. So good for them.
That's good news. That was resolved a lot quicker than we thought, to the point where, hey, United's flight from Newark, it even landed early today. That's a whole lot better than not existing at all.
They just grabbed a couple of people from a couple of airports. Like, does an email go out? Like, does anyone want to go to Greenland for a little bit and check some bags? And a couple of people raise their hands.
I mean, it's kind of crazy, but after all this, United had their one flight that diverted back to Newark. And then they had another one that I guess had a 23-hour delay. And then yesterday's flight operated early. So that saga was over a lot quicker than we thought it would be.
Excellent. I like when those things happen.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Let's talk about some orders and deliveries, shall we? Let's go to Canada, where WestJet has just placed the largest single Canadian order with Boeing in history for a total of 67 aircraft.
Yes. Not just 67 aircraft, but also a whole lot of options on top of that. So
yes.
60 737-10 hypothetical unicorn aircraft that may or may never be real, plus 25 options, and 7 firm orders, plus 4 options for the 787-9. Real interested where WestJet's going to end up putting those airplanes, since they drew back a lot of their long-haul flying, centered it all in, what was it, Calgary? And kind of just did that for a while. I'm not sure what they're going to do with up to 11, 12 more 787s. Are they going to re-expand out to the east coast of Canada? I don't know what the plan is here. Presumably somebody does. I do not.
We don't know what the plan is, but they've got a little bit of time to take delivery of those aircraft. And so when they start putting them into service, we will find out where they're going.
They will presumably operate somewhere.
That's the hard-hitting analysis that you get from this podcast.
You can only find that here.
They will fly those planes to an airport.
I mean, that's not a guarantee. I mean, they could just put them at the storage or lease them out. I don't know. We don't know anything. That's why you listen.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Putting that one on a t-shirt. Qantas has ordered more A321XLRs, and this is ahead of the first scheduled service. So they're going from 28 to 48 total A321XLR orders, and this is just after they've gotten the first 2 into the fleet and before they've even flown the first passengers with them. So they've decided that they really like these airplanes and they want more of them.
They really loved those delivery flights. They really proved themselves, and before even entry into service, like, yeah, we'll take a bunch more of those.
Here's one that makes very little sense. When you think Qatar Airways, and when you think what type of aircraft configuration Qatar Airways operates, usually it's premium heavy and some economy seating, but not these airplanes.
I think of the 777-300ER with Q Suite and the reluctantly thrust back into service A380 with whatever that thing has on board. What I don't think of is taking a couple A321neo from AirAsia, doing nothing to them, and pressing them in service with all 236 seats on board.
That is a very different experience compared to a normal Qatar Airways aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, these are not operating on the most premier routes in the Qatar Airways network, but
that makes
still,
sense.
AirAsia and Qatar Airways are polar opposite airlines. One doesn't do what the other does, but Qatar just putting into service 236 seat A321neos, probably still with the original AirAsia seats on board, so you know they're not going to be comfortable. Wow. Akbar Al-Baker, he is spinning in his grave that he is not yet in, because the man's not dead, but wherever he is,
he's spinning. Wherever he is right now, he is spinning
real hard.
His
This would never have happened under the reign of Akbar Al-Baker. This is crazy. Even their short-lived, never actually happened Saudi Arabian subsidiary Al Maha, even that had a business class cabin. This pressing into service AirAsia A321neos as is. Whoo, watch out for those if you happen to be flying Qatar Airways to destinations that aren't New York, London, Paris, Tokyo, etc.
Yeah, shorter haul stuff. Keep an eye on your aircraft assignment. American Airlines has taken delivery of its 1,000th mainline aircraft. It took delivery last week of Boeing 787-9, November 849 Alpha November. So congratulations to American Air on that one. That's one of the new premium heavy 787s.
Yeah, hopefully this one works and is all good to go. American plans on hitting 1,014 aircraft by the end of the year. So what is that? 2 aircraft per month seems doable at this rate.
Yeah, cool.
It's a lot of airplanes. Plus,
it is a lot
its entire regional fleet, which
takes it over 1,600.
Yeah, that's
nearly 1,700.
A lot of airplanes, a lot of paint.
Virgin Australia is taking its first. So I think they've taken contractual delivery, but they have not flown the airplane home yet. The first E195 E2 for the airline and for an Australian airline. So that is cool. And we'll
those are the ones like replacing the Fokker F100, but not going into like passenger service, only doing charter stuff, I think.
That is a good question.
Something along those
lines. Yeah, because they do a lot of the kind of the mining outfits and things like that.
Out in the West. But speaking of Embraer, we don't talk much about Embraer. They have secured South African certification for the E190 E2 and E195 E2 because, well, I had to be reminded myself that Airlink ordered those aircraft. I mean, only 10 of them for E195 E2s, only as recently as last month. So I would assume that Embraer had been working on this for a while, but good for them. I love a win for Embraer.
Who doesn't?
Boeing? Airbus?
Fair. This story is one that you flagged where I thought we were talking about something different.
What did you think we were talking about? You thought we were talking about a ferry flight.
Yes.
No, we are talking about a ferry boat. like
This is very
a thing that
different.
goes
Tell
on
me
the
more.
water. So we've talked a number of times how flights have had some trouble going down to the Greek islands, I think specifically, where we've seen flights that have gone up to like 36 hours, trying and trying again, and just not making it and giving it up and going back to Germany or wherever they came from. But in this case, this comes to us through One Mile at a Time, which comes to us from Aero Telegraph. But apparently on Sunday, August 31st, a Eurowings flight from Dusseldorf to Santorini just couldn't make it. The winds were too high, or it's always winds there. It's always winds in that region. But they had a go around and they ended up diverting. And instead of trying again and again and again, or giving up and bringing all those poor passengers back to Dusseldorf, Eurowings said, why don't we put people on a ferry the rest of the way and call it a day? And that is apparently exactly what happened. That's kind of shocking. This is not something you hear of airlines or really any transportation company doing often. Usually it's like they will land at their diversion point. They will call buses are available, but you can't drive a bus between islands. There's a lot of water in the way. So booking people on a ferry that's already operating on the route, that's thinking on your toes. I'm going to give a round of applause to the operations people involved in making that decision and booking all of those tickets. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea and a great way to get people where they want to go without having to, go all the way back to the airport of origin and have, crews that are spending so much time out of position. I think that's a win for everybody.
It's a pretty great idea. I'd love to see the email exchange back and forth of someone going, wait, hear me out. A boat.
Can you imagine the ACARS message? the pilots are getting.
ACARS messages are logged and they're out there. We should see if we could go back and dig one up.
All right. Jason, I'll leave that to you for next week. And on that note, while Jason goes and looks up the ACARS messages to see if we can find any of those, we'll call this episode 335 of AvTalk. Thank you all so very much for listening. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.